Now, throughout the summer Christmas period, we'll be injecting some debate into the program each night, thanks to our hand-picked panels. Kicking us off tonight, I've got New South Wales Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes and former Victorian Labor Senator Stephen Conroy. Hollie, Stephen, thank you so much for your time.
Nice to see you, Smithy.
Good to be with you.
Is it
Good to see you again, Hollie.
Nice to see you, Stephen. Nice to bump into you in Canberra last week.
Yeah, I saw a photo of you two together. Am I mistaken?
Well, we didn't share it with anyone else. We just sent it to you as a warm-up act.
Right, OK. I get it.
That's right.
Is it any wonder Africa seems like a petri dish for new COVID-19 variants? Look at this chart. Can I show you this? The world vaccination rate is 43%, and some of these African nations haven't even reached 2% fully vaccinated. I don't know. Maybe we should do what former British PM Gordon Brown suggested over the weekend, Stephen. Stop harbouring vaccines and start sending some of our doses to minnow nations to cut their head off the snake at the beginning.
Look, I couldn't agree with Gordon more. What people need to understand is we've done a fantastic job. Australia started a bit behind, but now leading the world almost in vaccination rate. And that doesn't protect us, because if there are millions and millions and tens of millions of people unvaccinated in the rest of the world, the way this virus works is it mutates and new strains can be created. Now, if we're lucky, this South African strain is more virulent, but it isn't as life-threatening. That's the best case scenario. But there'll be another one and another one. So the longer we hoard or don't help the nations that need the most vaccine, the more risk we take of being back in lockdowns and having more people die. So Gordon Brown is dead right. We need the world to start reaching out and helping all of the poorer nations who haven't been able to buy it, haven't been able to distribute it, and desperately need it.
Yeah, we must. Hollie, we're delivering vaccines to some Pacific nations. We're doing our job there in the region, and the US is doing its bit too. But the rest of the world aren't great sharers, are they?
Well, I think Stephen's right when he talks about it is important that the developed world shares its vaccines with the developing world. But Australia has been very focused on supporting its South Pacific neighbours. As of today, we have delivered over 9.2 million doses to the South Pacific. Now, I find it extraordinary today when we're sitting in question time and we're being criticised by the Greens and Labor for not sending vaccines now apparently to Africa when we've been absolutely distributing through the South Pacific. In fact, we've committed over 60 million vaccines. 9.2 million have been delivered. There's an additional 20 million that are going to be delivered by the end of 2022, and an additional 20 million on top of that in partnership with UNICEF that will be delivered. So there has been a significant number of vaccines delivered within our region, and that's where we're obviously trying to keep those nations around us that are developing safe. What we do know about viruses, though, and I was talking to a scientist about this last night, some of the information that we're hearing coming out of South Africa is this mutation has occurred in someone who actually had AIDS, so therefore had a very, very weakened immune system, if one at all, which allowed the virus to mutate. But we do know viruses mutate. But when they mutate, they tend to be weaker. Viruses want to live, but they cannot keep becoming more deadly to survive. They actually become weaker as they go through. But also we know the flu mutates every year. That is why the flu vaccine is different every year. There is no need for panic. There is no need for overreaction. There is no need for border closures, and there is no need for restrictions to go on to businesses again. We will obviously see how this plays out. But we have heard that the vaccine is effective against this strain, and as more information's come through, there is another vaccine coming out, I understand from the conversation I had last night, in around 100 days, that's definitely effective against this strain. So it's going to continue to evolve. We are supporting our neighbours, and we should continue to do so. Yeah,
I loved how Victoria's Health Minister reacted to the new strain yesterday. Martin Foley said it highlighted the urgent need, Stephen, to pass Dan's pandemic laws. He's a classic opportunist. But I've got to say, the Andrews government did cop it today from the father of tennis star Novak Djokovic. He said the world number one would probably not compete in Melbourne at the Australian Open because Victoria's vaccination restrictions are a form of blackmail. I guess his dad is close enough to him to know that he won't come. But seriously, if there are rules in place, don't you think they should be followed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, just suck it up, you sook. He's been a prominent anti-vaxxer. He threw that big party back at the beginning of COVID, yes, where him and a bunch of them all got infected at his big celebrity tournaments. I mean, this is a bloke that is being given freedom of choice. You can follow Australia's laws like every Australian has to, or you can stay home by choice. That is not blackmail. That is your choice. And that same rules apply to every country in the world. Every country has their own rules, their own laws, their own requirements. And for him to be using his dad, he hasn't even got the courage to front the camera and have an honest discussion about whether he's vaccinated or not, because he has just been a pathetic anti-vaxxer for a considerable period of time.
Yes, he can stay at home. As we get closer to a federal election, Labor got a bit cheeky in question time today, with Treasury spokesman Jim Chalmers wondering how much money the Treasurer had in the budget for marginal seats before the election. Have a listen.
How many funds in his budget are allocated at the discretion of the minister, and what's their total value?
What I can tell the member for Rankin is we don't have a big bad scheme, Mr Speaker, that wastes $2.4 billion. We have important programs across the budget which provide for competitive grants processes.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. My question's to the Treasurer, and I refer to his previous answer. If he doesn't know how many funds in his budget are allocated at the discretion of the minister and their total value, will he provide this answer at the end of today's question time? Shouldn't the Treasurer know how much of his $1 trillion in debt he's borrowed to spray around marginal seats?
Hollie, Josh Frydenberg wouldn't be approving of pork barrelling prior to an election, would he?
Let me tell you what today was, Chris Smith. Chris Smith, let me explain to you what today was. The Australia Institute, that very middle-of-the-road institution, hyper supportive Labor organisation of the Australia Institute, put out a study that was then published in The Guardian, which was then repeated by the Labor Party. And if you had a Venn diagram of that, it would basically be three overlapping circles. I mean, it just is absolutely ridiculous. When you go through the figures and when you read the piece by Catherine Murphy, I mean, she then goes on to talk about so many other things because she can't make her case. Most of the projects that they're pointing the finger at occur in rural and regional Australia. And the reason they occur in rural and regional Australia and therefore reflects more money being spent in coalition-held seats is because guess who holds most rural and regional seats?
National
Party.
When
we're talking about that, actually, no, the Liberal Party holds the most rural and regional seats, 24 to 16 with the National Party. So the Liberal Party actually holds the most rural and regional seats across this country. And a lot of the programs they're talking about are roads to recovery, regional investment.
Okay.
And if the Labor Party want to oppose investment in rural and regional areas, I think that shows why voters in rural and regional areas don't vote for them.
All right, very quickly, Stephen Conroy, we got an indication today from the calendar of sitting days in 2022 that was leaked by Labor's Tony Burke that we've got a budget in March 29, not May. When do you reckon he'll go? Is it May?
Or as pretty quickly as you can to avoid there being any parliamentary sittings. If you just look at how few weeks there are, look at that on your screen right now. That is fantastic. I wish I could have lived with a sitting pattern that thin. I mean, fair income. That is just an embarrassment to the parliamentary process.
Will Albo win,
he's got to
Stephen?
come out. Look, I think we're competitive. I don't think anyone should write Albo off. I think we're very competitive. I think if you look at the Prime Minister's public, the perspective of him, it's changed dramatically from 3 years ago. He got to create an image of himself, but 3 years of lived experience has led the Australian public to come to the conclusion that he's no John Howard. He's not a leader. And they're very, very willing to have a look at Labor. And Albo, I think, is continuing to confound his critics.
Miracles do happen, though, Hollie, don't they?
Oh, well, yes, they do. And I think I couldn't disagree more with what Stephen just said.
Okay.
Scott Morrison is absolutely a leader. He has led this country through COVID in a way that has seen Australia come out on top in almost every measurement, whether it's vaccine rates, whether it's economic recovery. Absolutely. And I think it'd be nice for people to actually have a good look at Albo and really start to think if that's who they want leading this country, because I'd be reasonably confident they'd say no.
OK, I've got to run. Senator Hollie Hughes, Stephen Conroy, thank you to both of you. Good to have you.
See you over the summer.